If you're already browsing Rightmove at midnight, mentally picking out furniture for a 3-bed in Manchester, I need to stop you right there. Because skipping straight to the property search is the single most expensive mistake that new investors make. And most of them don't realise it until the damage is already done. After 14 years helping investors build portfolios, we know exactly where things go wrong. It's almost never the property itself. It's the boring bit that should have happened before the search even started. So in this video, I'll walk you through the 5 steps that determine whether your investment works and exactly what I'd do if I was starting from scratch in 2026. Step 1, and this might sound a bit counterproductive for a property company to say, I'd ask myself whether property investing even makes sense for me anymore. Property used to be something you could do casually. Buy a flat, rent it out, pick up a few £100s a month. A bit of a side hustle. But those days are long gone. The UK tax system has completely changed, particularly since something called Section 24 reforms came in. And I know tax isn't the most exciting topic in the world, bear with me, but this is the bit that catches people out. If you're a higher rate taxpayer and you own property in your personal name, you can no longer deduct your full mortgage interest before calculating your tax bill. You only get a 20% tax credit. But what does that mean in practice? Well, say you're earning £80,000 from your job and your rental property brings in £12,000 a year with £8,000 going on your mortgage and other costs. You'd think you made £4,000 profit. Congratulations. HMRC disagrees. They tax you on something closer to the full £12,000, pushing you deeper into the higher tax brackets. It's like being charged for a 3-course meal when you only had the starter. So property doesn't work anymore as a way to top up your spending money. The tax hit makes it too inefficient for anyone earning a decent salary. The alternative is to own the property within a company, which avoids all these problems as long as you keep the money within the company. So in this situation, you keep more of what you've made, but you still don't get the personal spending money effect that people used to use property for. So property doesn't really work for income anymore. But, and this is important, it still works brilliantly as a way to build wealth over the long term. You just need to think of it differently. Think of it as a compounding machine that grows in value while inflation chips away at your mortgage debt for you. Time does the heavy lifting and you just have to be patient enough to let it. And if you're thinking, well, why not just stick it in an index fund and be done with it? Fair question. Stocks are great because they're easy. But what property gives you is borrowing power. You can control a £200,000 asset with £50,000 of your own money. If that property grows 5% in a year, that's £10,000 of growth on your £50,000 investment, which is a 20% return on your actual cash invested. Plus, you've got a tenant paying your mortgage for you. That combination of borrowing power, rental income, and inflation eroding your debt is what makes property unique. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, am I willing to commit to this seriously? Because just owning one property for a bit of extra income used to be pretty normal, but it isn't worth the hassle anymore. By the time you've done the research, dealt with the admin, handled the regulations, for a single property, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. And I'm not even getting into the regulatory side yet. EPC requirements, licensing, the changes to eviction rules, it's a lot. But these regulations hit hardest when you don't plan for them. Buy the right property in the right condition through the right structure, and all this compliance is just a manageable fact of life. It's the investors who bought without thinking about this stuff who are now scrambling. And if you want an easy way to keep yourself up to date with everything that's changing in regulations and everything that's going on in the property market in general, then you can sign up to our free newsletter, Property Pulse. The link is in the description. The next thing I do is an honest audit of my resources, because there are 3 things that matter: time, cash, and knowledge. We call it the readiness triangle. And everyone's triangle is lopsided in a different way because nobody scores perfectly on all 3. I certainly didn't when I started. And this is important to understand because it dictates your strategy. So say you've got about £50,000 to invest, but that's all you're going to have for a long time. That means you need to make that money work hard. You're looking at value-add strategies, refurbishments or flips where you can pull your capital back out and go again. That takes more time and more knowledge, but it's how you make 50 grand do the work of 100. On the other hand, if you're cash rich but time poor, maybe you've got a demanding job, you'll need to compensate by paying for expert help or choosing a more hands-off strategy. Something like buying new builds through a company like ours, where most of the legwork is done for you. There was an investor our team spoke to recently. Let's call him Mark. He had £50,000 saved up and he was itching to get into property. His first instinct was to buy a cheap flat, pay cash, and start collecting rent straight away. But when we sat down and went through his situation properly, it turned out that Mark had plenty of time. He worked from home and had flexible hours, and he was genuinely interested in learning about refurbishments. So, weirdly, we guided him away from working with us. It just wouldn't have made sense for him. Instead, he went down a completely different route. He bought a property that needed work, added value, refinanced to pull most of his deposit back out, and now he's on his way to property number 2. Same £50,000, completely different outcome. The only difference was he spent a couple of weeks thinking and researching before he committed to buying. That audit of time, money and knowledge tells you what you've got to work with. The next step is figuring out where you want to end up. And I mean getting specific, not just I want to make money from property. That's like saying your fitness goal is being healthy, which is true but useless. Are you trying to build something that lets you quit your job in 10 years? Are you thinking more long-term, like a pension replacement in 20 or 30 years? Or do you want to be more active, doing refurbs and generating cash that you can live off sooner? These are completely different goals that need different approaches, different types of properties, different locations, and different structures. And speaking of structure, this is one of the most important decisions you'll make early on. Should you buy it in your own name or through a limited companies? I'm not going to give you specific tax advice, I'd rather not get sued, but I will tell you what we see with the investors that we work with. For most people building a portfolio for the long term, especially higher rate taxpayers, a limited company tends to be more tax efficient. Companies can still deduct their full mortgage interest as an expense before calculating tax, and you pay corporation tax on the profits, which never goes above 25%, rather than income tax, which can hit 40 or 45%. The catch, as I mentioned earlier, is that if you want to take the money out of the company to spend, you'll pay dividend tax on top. So it doesn't work as well if you need rental income to live off right now. But if your plan is to let profits build up inside the company, reinvest into more properties and access that wealth later in life when your income is lower, then a company structure often makes a lot of sense. In 2015, about 41% of buy-to-let purchases went through companies. By 2023, it was 74%. When 3/4 of the market is moving in the same direction, that tells you something. But this is not a decision you should make based on a YouTube video. Now you know the basics, you can go speak to a specialist tax advisor and you'll be well placed to assess what they're telling you. But make this decision early. Don't buy 3 properties in your personal name and then realise you should have used a company. Transferring properties later means paying stamp duty again and possibly capital gains tax too. It's like trying to change the foundations after you build the house. Technically possible, financially you'd wish you'd just done it right the first time. We hear from investors in this situation more often than I'd like, and the conversation always starts the same way. I wish someone had told me. If you've already bought in your personal name, don't panic. You can still make those properties work. For your next purchase, set up a company and do it properly from here. The worst thing you can do is let a past mistake stop you from making better decisions in the future. So you've decided the property is for you, you've got clear goals, and you've sorted out your structure. Now the bit you've been waiting for. Where should you invest? What makes this decision much simpler than people think in 2026 is the sheer size of the gap between the north and the south. The gap's always been there, but over time it's gone from a crack to a chasm. And now it can be the difference between your investment working and being left wondering why you bothered. Over the past year or so, house prices nationally have grown by around 2%, but that national average hides huge regional variation. In London and the southeast, prices have been flat. In some areas, they've fallen. Meanwhile, parts of the northwest and Yorkshire have seen growth well above the national average. And this isn't a one-year blip. This pattern has been consistent for years and it's only going to continue. If you're buying in the southeast, you're dealing with eye-watering prices. A decent investment property might cost you £400,000 or £500,000. And that means that the yields are lower because rent doesn't scale up with the prices. And the growth prospects aren't great for the foreseeable future. Compare that to the northwest, where you can buy a solid 3-bedroom family home for as little as £150,000 to £200,000. Better yields, better growth forecasts, and your money goes so much further. That said, not everywhere in the north is a goldmine. Some areas are cheap because demand is weak, the local economy is struggling, and there's no growth potential. So you do still need to be selective. Now you might be thinking, but I live in the southeast. I don't know anywhere up north. How am I supposed to invest somewhere I've never been? Well, most successful property investors that I know don't invest on their doorstep. They invest where the returns are best. That might mean traveling for viewings, or it might mean working with someone who does the legwork for you. And the great thing about the setup right now is you don't need to find the next hidden gem. Just getting into the right half of the country does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So think about whether there's anywhere you already have a connection to. Maybe you went to university somewhere, or you've got family in a particular city. Or at least look at places with good transport links from where you live so you can get there without it being a nightmare. Then within that area, you can start focusing in on commuter towns and suburbs that benefit from what we call the ripple effect. When a major city like Manchester or Leeds gets expensive, demand spills out to the surrounding areas. Places like Stockport, Bolton, Wakefield, Doncaster. They're not glamorous. No one's making Instagram reels about Doncaster town centre. But they are where the numbers work. Prices rise as people priced out of the city centre look for somewhere they can afford. And we help our clients buy more than £100 million worth of property every year in locations just like this by churning through a lot of opportunities, rejecting the vast majority and putting forward the best that we find. If you want to see what's available right now, there's a link in the description. So you found the area. Now you need to make sure the numbers stack up. And this is where a lot of new investors trip up. Now, I can safely predict that there'll be comments on this video saying the numbers don't work anymore, buy-to-let is dead, mortgage rates are too expensive. And there'll probably be comments saying much worse. This is YouTube after all. And it's true, rates are a lot higher. But the other huge thing that's happened over the past few years is that rents have rocketed. Run the numbers based on today's mortgage rates and today's rents, and I think you'll be surprised. Not only that, if rates come down in the next few years, which most forecasters expect, your numbers only get better. You locked in a purchase price set in the higher rate environment, but your costs drop. But if I were starting again today, and I tell everyone unlucky enough to be on the receiving end of this lecture the same thing, you've got to move beyond thinking about just the yield. What you need to optimize for instead is total return, rental yield plus capital growth over time. Let me show you why. Say you're comparing two properties. Property A gives you a 7% gross yield, but sits in an area with no growth prospects. Cheap houses in struggling towns often look great on paper. Property B only gives you 5%, but it's in an area where prices are expected to grow 3 to 4% per year. Over 10 years, Property B will make you more money, and it's not going to be close. Now, very high yields and strong capital growth rarely go together. If somewhere has incredibly high yields, it usually means prices are low relative to rents. And prices are low for a reason. Economic decline, poor tenant demand, or just somewhere nobody really wants to live. So you need a property that works from day one, covering its costs and giving you a profit. But you also want it to be somewhere that you believe values will grow. The key to this is often where the property sits within a given town or city. Normally, you don't want the very best part of town. Those super posh areas with £500,000 houses normally don't stack up. Prices are too high relative to what you can charge in rent. But you don't want the cheapest, roughest part of town either. I've seen investors chase high yields into areas where they've ended up with endless problems. Difficult tenants, high turnover, properties that never seem to go up in value. The sweet spot, boringly enough, is the middle. Decent areas with working families, good schools nearby, and reasonable transport links. These properties rent easily, hold their tenants longer, and see steady growth over time. Not exciting, but very profitable. What I'd suggest is running the numbers on a few different types of properties in the areas you've identified. Plug in realistic figures for rent, mortgage costs, management fees, maintenance and voids, and see what comes out. And if you want a spreadsheet to help with this, we've got one you can download for free. There's a link in the description. Now, finally, you can start looking at properties. And as you do that, I want to share a few things that will make a big difference. First, look at a lot of properties, way more than you think you need to. I see investors all the time who'll look at 3 properties, put in an offer on one, and just hope for the best. Whereas our team, doing this professionally, looks at dozens of deals for every one we agree on. Not because we're being precious, but because when you've got options, you can be picky. And when you're picky, you can drive harder bargains. There'll be plenty of properties you'd be happy to buy, but at your price, not theirs. The only way to have the negotiating power is to have alternatives. If you've only looked at a handful, you're much more likely to pay over the odds just to get the deal done. Second, in this market, you must be pushing for a discount. And if I was investing back in 2021, I wouldn't have pushed this so hard. That was a hot market. Properties were getting snapped up within days of being listed. You could barely get a viewing, let alone negotiate. But 2026 is a completely different environment. There's more stock available than there has been for years. Sales have slowed right down, and developers and sellers who need to shift properties are under real pressure. So don't be shy about negotiating hard and going in low. In this market, many sellers are relieved just to get an offer. A genuine discount at the start gives you instant equity, putting you thousands of pounds ahead before you've done a thing. Later, you can access that equity through refinancing and use it to fund your next purchase. That's how a portfolio picks up speed. So that's the process. And yes, I'm sorry to say, there are 5 steps before you even make an offer. I realise I've essentially told you to eat salad every meal for a week before you're allowed to tuck into the cake, but this is exactly what separates the investors who build something real from the ones who end up with a property that costs them money, sleep, or both. Get these 5 steps right, and the rest of the process gets dramatically simpler. Skip them, and you'll spend the next 5 years fixing what you could have prevented in 5 weeks. If you're wondering what to do first, sit down this weekend with a pen and paper and draw out your own readiness triangle. Write down how much cash you could realistically commit in the next 12 months, how much time you can commit per week, and what your honest knowledge level is. That's step 1 done, and from there, everything starts to take shape. But even once you've built your portfolio, a lot of investors are still leaving serious money on the table without realising it. Not because of bad properties or bad tenants, but because of how they're structured for tax. So watch this video next, where an accountant breaks down how to legally pay as little as 0% property tax, and how to make sure every pound you've worked so hard for actually stays with you.